Welcome. There's a monster type that can trouble the players as much in town as in the wilds. I'm talking about rival adventurers. They live in both worlds. They can be deadly rivals out in a dungeon and social monsters back in town that make the players absolutely miserable. For this reason, they make excellent campaign villains. Today, we're going to look at how you can make and use rival adventuring parties in your ShadowDark game. Now, there is a watershed moment where everything changed about NPCs. And we're going to use that as our departure point. So we'll cover that and then talk about how to build them. Here's the thing, though. If you stick around to the end, we're going to cover the most terrifying encounter in all of Dungeons & Dragons. And we'll see if we can bring that forward into ShadowDark. Welcome to my channel. I'm John. This is a place I like to talk about old-time Dungeons & Dragons and new-time things like ShadowDark. Today we're going to cover the rival adventuring party. And part of why I love them is that they are competition for the players. They tend to raise the stakes. They are great for your world building. They send a message to the players that they're not unique, that there are other adventuring parties out there, maybe adventuring guilds. So they really create a sense of realism in the world, or the idea that the world's in motion. And they can bring a soap opera element to the game because they can be allies and they betray the players. They become enemies. They're great fun for us referees. But as a foundational concept, let's talk about the big change that happened with non-player characters. In the first 3 editions of Dungeons & Dragons, so from the 1970s all the way until the early 2000s, NPCs and player characters were made out of the same exact stuff. That's why I'm using that brick symbol. So BX, first edition, second, third. If you wanted to make a non-player character, you rolled stats and made them just like a player character and had to level them up and go through all the same steps that you did for a PC. And then things changed dramatically after 3rd edition. I'm using a snowflake symbol because when I think about this concept, I'm always reminded of Fight Club. There's this character, Tyler Durden. He goes, "You're not special. You're not unique. You're not a beautiful snowflake. You're made of the same decaying matter as everything else." Or I'm paraphrasing, but it's a quote, something like that. And that's what player characters were in the earlier editions. And then 4th edition comes along and the designers say, no, wait, time out. You are special. Player characters are unique, special, completely different from non-player characters and monsters and things like that. And game design hasn't really been the same. So this is the world we're inheriting now with modern games like ShadowDark, where there is this lack of symmetry between what player characters can do and what monsters can do. And so the first question, okay, why did they make this break? When you look at interviews with old designers, for the most part, they'll say something along the lines of, well, monsters and player characters and NPCs are monsters for these purposes. They serve different purposes, or they serve different fundamental design principles in the game. And ultimately, when we're thinking about monsters, we want them to be easy to prep, easy to run. If they're easy to run at the table, then it's less cognitive load on the referee. You can focus on other stuff, and it supports exception-based design. These are all good things, I would say. And what I mean by exception-based design is, take a situation like this. You want the enemy boss to be like a wizard pyromancer, some guy that he's got fire armor and fire everything, but the rules don't support it. Well, in exception-based design, you just create a custom stat block for this guy and a bunch of powers that are unique to him. And off you go. You're off to the races. What we lose some verisimilitude. We lose some transparency. The players lose the ability, to a degree, to be able to strategize and plan. In the old days, they'd say, well, we know everything that non-player characters can do because we're all built the same way. We don't have that anymore. What's this actually mean for ShadowDark, like this lack of symmetry? Well, let's take a look. I've put a player character party and an NPC party side by side so we could take a look at them. As you go down the stats briefly, the first thing you'll notice is that all of the non-player characters have a lot more hit points than the player characters. Now, fighters and monsters are typically on parity, but the poor thief or wizard, they're looking over their NPC counterpart and say, oh man, I wish I had 24 hit points or something like that. The NPC monsters, for the most part, will do more damage than the player characters. Almost all of them get multiple attacks. So in ShadowDark, you'll have this situation where the player character fighter is like, I attack, and then the non-player character fighter attacks back and is like, thunk, 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 and gets to roll 3 times. It feels like they're cheating. So those are examples of how asymmetrical design will kind of manifest itself in terms of what can a player character do versus a non-player character. Now, remember, on the player character side, you have all these things like you have luck tokens and death timers, and the players have a lot more spells. They have teamwork. They have a lot of other things going for them, which is why they can still win when in some ways NPCs feel really superior to them. And while we're talking about NPCs, let me just point out something about NPC spellcasters in ShadowDark. This is a very easy rule for people to overlook. NPC spellcasters are just like player character spellcasters in terms of they make spell rolls. If they fail the roll, they lose the spell, just like a player character. If they roll a 1, it's a spell failure. And in some cases, at high levels, you'll notice that NPC spellcasters can actually cast multiple spells. And that can be a little bit terrifying because the player is like, I cast fireball. And then the NPC spellcaster says, I cast 2 fireballs. But I guess life can be good as a monster. So now that we've got that out of the way, player characters and non-player characters follow radically different rules here in the modern age. Let's take a look at how we actually build an NPC party. Now, one of the cool things about ShadowDark is that there's several pages to help us randomly create NPC parties. So in preparation for this video, I took 15-20 minutes to roll according to the tables in the book. They're really easy to use, and a whole concept for an NPC party came together quickly. So let's see how they look. The party I ended up creating, I called them Hell's Rangers, and that came right out of a table that suggests what an NPC party name could look like. They are a bunch of chaotic adventurers questing for an artifact because their leader is suffering from some kind of curse. They believe the artifact will cure him. They're wealthy tomb raiders. They will cooperate with player characters, but then look to betray them at an opportune moment. And then for the classes themselves, I just picked appropriate stat blocks from the book. I will level them up as necessary. We're going to talk a lot about where we can find these stat blocks a little bit later in the video. One of the things I do when I'm creating NPCs, I always want to know 3 things about the NPC. What is something, how they look, that's descriptive and memorable so that anytime they meet that character again, I'm like, oh yeah, it's that gap-toothed cleric. I want some kind of mannerism or physical characteristics so that if I'm role-playing the character, like the superstitious person, they're always doing weird things, marking themselves or rolling their prayer beads. And so there's some distinctive mannerism about them. And then a lot of times I want to know some kind of a secret as well. We've got our adventuring party. How can we actually use them now in the game to be dark foils or at least irritating foils to the player characters? Well, here's some ideas. The top two are my go-to. I use them the most. I will either have the rival adventurers leapfrog the players in whatever dungeon they're in, or finish their jobs and take their quests. Let me explain how those work. If you're running any kind of sandbox game, as the players encounter like villagers, the Baron, they learn what's going on in the area. They're going to accumulate a series of different quest ideas. And any of the quests that they choose not to do, they're like opportunity costs because they choose to explore the dungeon more. Maybe they give up the opportunity to go deal with the bandits that are terrorizing the South Road. And that's where your rival adventurers come in, because when the players are off doing their thing and they're ignoring other quests, well, someone else can do those other quests. Imagine a situation where the players get back to town after exploring the dungeon and they're like, hey, why is everybody so happy? Or people are kind of exuberant in the inn or something like that. And the innkeeper's like, oh, didn't you hear? The Hells Rangers came to town. They went and took care of those bandits that were marauding the South Road. By the way, the bandits had this huge pile of gold. And then the Hells Rangers came back to town with all their treasure and threw a huge carousing party. In fact, the Baron has commended them and he's given them another quest. That's why they're not in town right now. That's the kind of thing that's going to drive your players nuts, especially if they feel like their rivals are getting ahead of them in terms of reputation or social standing. The other thing you can do is if the rivals are interested in doing similar things like the players, ideally this works the best in like mega dungeon situations where maybe there's a very large dungeon outside the town or local area. When the players leave, you can have the rivals leapfrog them. One of the things that will drive your players nuts, and every group has a guy like this, you're 2/3 of the way through the level, you know a boss fight is coming up. All the information you've been picking up as you've been exploring this level is that there's a boss with a huge treasure not that far ahead. And then there's that one guy in the group who says, I don't think we should push our luck. I think we should go rest and heal and get all of our spells and only come back and face the boss when we're perfect. Okay, so the players leave, they rest, they take their time, they come back to the dungeon, and all those rooms leading up to the boss are empty or filled with corpses. They find the boss is dead, his treasury's been looted, and there's one of those wooden poker chips that say HR on it for Hell's Rangers, and they realize that while they were gone, waiting for the perfect rest, the Hell's Rangers have snuck in, killed their boss and taken their treasure, and then gone down to the next level of the dungeon. Again, this is the kind of stuff, even though it's not directly aggressive, will really make your players dislike their rival adventurers. And then there's a bunch of other ideas on here as well about making alliances or causing trouble for the players with the authorities back home. But just those two simple ones of doing quests the players ignore and then sometimes competing for them, competing with them in the same dungeon for the same stuff. Oof. Those are fighting words. So now we know how to build rival adventure parties. We've got ideas on how to use them to really be sort of gadflies and irritants to your player characters. What else can we do to smooth out this process and make it fast and easy to generate NPC parties? One of the things I like to do is keep a table of all the different NPC stat blocks and what level they are. So as I'm generating a party, it's very easy to go pull an appropriate leveled stat block. Now, this is a list that exists in core ShadowDark, meaning that it's either in the core rulebook or in one of the cursed scrolls. But there is a huge opportunity here for us to have lots and lots more NPC stat blocks to have a proper variety. So where else can we go to find more NPCs? Now, back in the day, like 1980s D&D, there were actually like official TSR supplements like the Shady Dragon Inn or the Rogues Gallery that were like full of NPCs for making NPC parties. The Shady Dragon Inn was a book of just detailed NPC descriptions. And then the Rogues Gallery was just tables of like 100 thieves, 100 assassins, 100 druids, and so on. If we look out at the ShadowDark third-party marketplace, what's out there that can help us? One book I really like is Allies and Enemies by Jeff Stevens. This is a book of like 50 detailed NPCs, and each one has like a 1 or 2 page write-up, some unique abilities, a piece of art, and ideas on how you could integrate them into a campaign, either maybe as a patron, a boss, maybe they're the person sponsoring a rival adventuring party, or in some cases, you can insert some of these special NPCs right into the rival adventuring parties directly. Take a look at the example I have right up on the screen. It's this character called Sir Westerland. If you read their history, they fought devils like 10 years ago, came back from the wars, and have been gathering power and influence ever since. But the character is now devil possessed. A devil is like sort of puppeting Sir Westerland in their own body or in her own body. And so Sir Westerland has like genius intellect and very charismatic because it's the devil controlling all their options. And in addition to being a knight, they can draw on all these diabolic powers. That's such an interesting situation. It would make like a really, really interesting rival adventuring leader of an NPC party, because the NPCs are being led by a devil, or I don't know if the players ever drove the devil out and now they've got this person who might be their ally all of a sudden because they've freed her after 10 years. The book is full of interesting characters like that. So this is definitely one I'll recommend for additional NPCs. I'll put a link to it down below. It does raise the question, though, like what else is out there just to get more generic stat blocks? A few months ago, I did a deep review of this ShadowFinder Bestiary. It's like 1,500 or 1,200 new monsters for ShadowDark. I recommend it a lot, but there's actually like 15 more NPC stat blocks in there as well. So not a lot in the grand scheme of things, but every little bit helps. Another one I've learned about is this book, Scallywags. I can't speak to it like a review. I haven't been able to review it, but there's a free preview out there, and it seems to be about pirates and ships and naval combat. Then in the back, it seems to have a lot of NPC stat blocks, maybe 40 or so new stat blocks. I'm sure a viewer out there has this one. Maybe you could drop a note down into the comments about what you thought of it. I had also come across a Kickstarter called Dogs of War that's supposed to be a bestiary of all sorts of NPC stat blocks. Again, I don't have anything more to go on than that at this point, but it does look like there are some people out there, third-party publishers, trying to fill this gap around stat blocks. And there is actually a huge opportunity, I think, for third-party publishers here. If you think about the most interesting bosses in an NPC party, it's some kind of a spellcaster. And from a stat block perspective, we can use enchanters, necromancers, conjurers, summoners, evokers, battle mages. There's a wide range of different magic types available. Oh, I was talking about pyromancers earlier. So you could have elementalists, earth mages, sky mages, all the clerical stuff, dark druids, good druids, shape changers, evil high priests. And before you know it, when you think that, we need a necromancer stat block, but we should have a low-level necromancer, a mid-level, a high-level. We should have stat blocks for all different ancestries. Like what are, I don't know, dwarven vault guards like, or elven rangers and things like that. You start seeing that there's an opportunity to create a lot of NPC stat blocks to really fill out a proper ShadowDark bestiary. So good luck, people. Good luck, third-party creators. I believe in you. The last thing I want to talk about before we wrap, I said that we would discuss the most terrifying encounter in all of Dungeons & Dragons history. I'm wondering if anyone's guessed what it is yet. The most terrifying encounter, and it's not a beholder, it's not Tiamat, it's not facing off with Asymmetrical. It's walking through a dungeon corridor and running into a level 1 magic user with sleep. Imagine this situation, and this is casting us back to the old days, back when things were symmetrical. Your low-level party is exploring a dungeon. You've got your torch, you round the corridor, and 60, 90 feet away, in the darkness, what do you see? Hell's Rangers, the low-level version. And your wizard starts to do funny things with his fingers, saying, I've got a sleep spell. And then you realize, with a sense of absolute horror, that 80 feet away, the Hell's Ranger level 1 wizard starts going like this with his fingers and tells his own commander, I've got a sleep spell. That was far and away the most terrifying encounter in Dungeons & Dragons, and it could happen with alarming frequency, again, because of symmetry. They had what you had. And a lot of times, it all came down to the initiative roll. The two parties are eyeing each other. Tumbleweeds start blowing through the dungeon like it's some kind of OK Corral showdown. And this is just the world we lived in when you gamed back in the 70s and 80s. The terror of symmetrical design. I know this sounds like some kind of a Gen X meme, like, back in my day, we drank water from hoses and went outside and played with rocks. Kids didn't have bike helmets or wore seatbelts in cars. And when we played Dungeons & Dragons, we were afraid of level 1 magic users with sleep spell. I wouldn't want to deprive modern gamers of this. So is there a way for us to put the most terrifying encounter in the world into ShadowDark? I think so. I'm going to bring up like my suggestion for what a ShadowDark friendly sleep spell would look like for monsters. You know, there's this apprentice wizard stat block in the core RPG. It's very sad. He can't do very, very many things. Maybe the apprentice wizard could have slumber as a spell. It'd be DC 11. I don't think we want to put the entire party to sleep. No saving throw or ability check whatsoever. I do think we would add like a DC 15 con check to it. That does seem to be a violation of ShadowDark design on one level, which says if you made a spell check to cast it, then you don't have to make another check to withstand the effect of the spell. But player characters are special, so maybe we should give them that. And instead of it being asleep for an hour or something like that, 1d4 rounds, that feels more in line with the spirit of ShadowDark. So this is still pretty terrifying, just not as absolute as 1980s sleep. The other thing is because there's a high probability that the monsters will move forward and stick people with knives, coup de grace style, I think we do need to clarify that when a coup de grace happens to a sleeping character, they're not insta-dead, but rather in ShadowDark terms, they go to 0 hit points and immediately have to roll their death timer. Anyway, that's how my brain works. I'm curious if anyone else has tried to create a version of the sleep spell for their own home campaign. Let me know what you think. And again, if you made it this far, I hope this has been interesting. How to assemble NPC parties and use them in your game to drive your players a little mad. Please consider liking and subscribing to my channel. Thank you. It helps a lot. Now, there's been big ShadowDark news this week. Curse Scroll 5 is out. I haven't even cracked it yet. So I'm hoping to read that whenever I get the chance to make another video. It'll probably be talking about Curse Scroll 5. If you're interested in other Curse Scrolls, the series, I've looked at the other and all the other ones in the series. You can see those up here. Otherwise, thanks for being here. I'll see everyone next time.